to In Focus. So back in February, 27-year-old Hannah Wilt passed away from mesothelioma, and she filed a lawsuit in January of 2020 against Johnson & Johnson, alleging that their top executives were aware that their baby powder products contained toxic chemicals that could lead to cancer. This was just one of the 38,000 lawsuits against the company, claiming that traces of asbestos, a chemical that can cause ovarian cancer and mesothelioma, were found in their baby powder products. Shortly after, Wilt's lawsuit was blocked, and last October, J&J spun off a subsidiary in Texas called LTL. They were able to offload their liability onto their shell company, keeping their assets safe and secure. And LTL then filed for bankruptcy. So basically, J&J was able to skirt off any threats from lawsuits through a shell company. Join me now to discuss is criminal defense attorney and anchor at Law and Crime Network, Bob Bianchi. Bob, thank you so much for joining me. So, Bob, what do you make of these allegations that they're trying to use this type of bankruptcy to avoid any sort of liability of paying off what is potentially due?
Wow, Stephanie, talk about a loophole. You know, shouldn't me and you have this kind of opportunity? We have assets and we have debt. I would love to be able to start a Bob Bianchi corporation, take all the debt, my mortgage, everything that I owe, park it into that LLC, and then claim, you know what, I'm bankrupt. So the LLC takes the debt, but I get to keep all my assets. And all your viewers would love to do that, Stephanie. And that is essentially what this company is doing. Johnson & Johnson, who allegedly knew about the toxicity of these products, in order to avoid bankruptcy, and it's not just them, it's becoming a trend around the country, are starting separate LLCs, parking their debt in those LLCs like you indicated. Then the LLC goes bankrupt, but the profits of the company and the assets of the company remain protected. You know, Stephanie, bankruptcy was meant to protect individuals and corporations who were struggling to get by, to give them an opportunity to reorganize their finances so that they could continue. But what this is just, as they call it, a Texas two-step. I don't know why, because I guess they're using Texas state law. And it's not just Texas, it's other laws as well. They find where the bankruptcy laws are favorable to the state, and they find what is literally a legal loophole that needs to be closed by the federal government or the state legislatures.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, it's not just Johnson & Johnson that's allegedly using this tactic. It's just other big companies that are doing this, allegedly. Apparently J&J is worth $400 billion. And so, like, people are still wondering, like, well, how could you file for bankruptcy or have this sort of, side area and try to escape all liability? It just seems so wrong. And think about the people who are waiting for their settlements or anything else, who've had serious health issues that they relate back to this product.
Yeah, what it essentially is doing is that the companies have these poor people that are looking for compensation between a rock and a hard place. The bedrock of our legal system is that you should have an opportunity to be heard in court. It's the one thing about being a lawyer I love. Whether you win or lose, you can drag a big company or a government agency in, and you can hold them accountable. That's what really breathes sunshine and makes significant changes into the positive direction in our society. But they're finding this loophole. They're really depriving these individuals, and they're breaking their backs. What they're doing, Stephanie, is they're saying, look, if you want to settle the case, we're willing to do that on pennies on the dollar. But if you decide you want to exercise your right to a trial, I'm going to park all my debt in this company. I'm going to go bankrupt, and you're going to get nothing.
Yeah, and then of course, there's going to be people who pile on against Johnson & Johnson and try to get on the bandwagon and blame their health issues on the use of their product, and it is probably difficult to prove. But I know back in 2018, Johnson & Johnson was forced to pay 22 women with ovarian cancer more than $2 billion, and then right now the rest of everyone else is in limbo.
Yeah, I mean, so there's no doubt about the fact that, I mean, a products liability case, and we've had them, that's what this is called, for many, many years. It's very well established in the law. Class action lawsuits can be filed so that all parties interested can have one legal action. But let's be honest what's going on here. It's really a choice of what government wants to do with this, because a lawsuit against Johnson & Johnson or tobacco companies, for example, who knew that smoking was dangerous but hid it from the public, could literally crush the company. So you have to make a decision. Are you going to provide what does the community want? Legal loopholes so that the companies are not held accountable and can continue to sell products that they know. I mean, it's one thing if they didn't know, but they know are dangerous, and then they can use this legal loophole. Or do we say, as a community, as a citizenry, that we believe that you should be held accountable, and if you do something like this and this crushes your company, so be it. That's the way it's got to be. So, we'll see what happens. I expect on both sides of the aisle, may I add, I know that people are very concerned about this particular issue, so I wouldn't be shocked if you guys bringing attention to this and the attention that's being brought by the media to create some sort of legislation to curb this practice. Now, to the last point, Stephanie, the fact that Johnson & Johnson and other companies utilize the laws that are out there to their advantage, well, that's what lawyers are there to do as well. So, it's not that Johnson & Johnson has a moral obligation here. They may want to feel that way, but if they don't, people use the legal system in order to get an advantage, and that's what this company and other companies seem to be doing. So the loophole's got to be closed.
Yeah, it appears that what they're doing is legal, and as you're pointing out, it's a loophole. Could be unethical, if you will, if that's the way that they're using it. So that can be questioned. But at the end of the day, this is up to lawmakers and people who create the laws to shut this down if that's what they want to do. Bob, really quickly, we're almost out of time, but I wanted to get to this. I thought this was an interesting story. So Burger King is being accused of false advertising in a lawsuit alleging that the Whoppers are too small. So I'm sure if you've ever been to a fast food or the drive-thru, like the burgers and everything on their menu look amazing and really big and like something you'd want to eat. And then maybe you get in person and it doesn't really exactly look like what you ordered. So do you think that there's any merit here? Will this case continue to go on, or is this just a frivolous lawsuit?
Stephanie, I don't know, because they in the complaint they bring up a really good point, and I thought this was a good tactical move by the lawyers. They're indicating that it is not only the consumer that's being defrauded, and in essence a breach of contract for deceptive practices, of which Burger King was held accountable by England about a decade or so ago for similar kinds of things. But what it also does by over advertising and say it's much bigger than it is and properly displaying their products, they're getting harmed because consumers are being driven to Burger King as opposed to their companies, and they're being penalized because they're being accurate in their advertising as opposed to Burger King. So there's not just an interest of, you kind of look at it like it's frivolous. Hey, deceptive practices are deceptive practices, and somebody can file a lawsuit, and a lot of times we say, oh, wow, it's an individual, it's got to actually grind, they're looking for money. But that angle about how it affects other companies that are advertising properly, I think was a smart angle. So I think there's some legs to this, but in the end, it's about the size of a picture. We'll see what a court says.
Yeah, well, they were saying that the pictures are 35% larger than what you actually get, and clearly they look different. I was seeing the pictures of their advertisement versus like the burger that you'd order there, and obviously huge difference. And it's a South Florida lawyer who filed the federal lawsuit seeking class action. So we'll see where that goes. As you're pointing out, I mean, the damages for people who ordered a burger, maybe not huge, but it is deceptive. And if people see something, they shouldn't get something else completely. And also, too, what this attorney was saying is that it's one thing to take like a nice photo with special lighting, but to have a product that's completely not it is just totally unfair.
Yeah, and that's essentially what the law says. I mean, is it incentivizing people to purchase a product deceptively by making it appear to be one thing that it's not? So, I mean, if a court is later to determine that the picture is 35% bigger than the actual product, I mean, that's a big difference. And so, it's not just the idea that somebody's harmed so much that a $6 sandwich is going to make a huge difference in their life. What these deceptive practices laws are set out to do is to stop companies from doing this kind of thing so that there's a fair competition amongst companies as well as consumers. To somebody who's feeding a family that, and they mentioned this in the suit, that may be economically disadvantaged. They're looking for the biggest amount of a burger that they're getting, maybe chopping it up to a couple of different family members. And listen, there's poverty and food issues in this country. And when they get there and they purchase the product, it's as small as the competitor. It's just not fair. So, I mean, there's a lot of societal implications about this.
Yeah. I would see it as a theft or a scam if I ordered something and it was 35% smaller. Well, Bob, I got to leave it here. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Coming up next.